I think of the life of the miner who must work all his day underground, where his lamplight is all that will shine there, and it's dark and it's damp all around. It is 2 or 3 miles to the coal face, and the tunnel is jagged and low, but he cannot find work on the surface, so it's down in the mines he must go.
Welcome back to the Arigna Mining Experience, where Kieran Dwyer joins us. And Kieran, you had a summer in the Arigna Mines back in 1985, ironically enough, 40 years ago now at this stage. You took in a number of hits when you were working. You were in Lynch's, you were Rover, Dumnavagi. So you got to see a couple of the mines first-hand and close-up.
I did, John, yeah. I started off in Lynch's and I worked there for maybe 5 or 6 weeks, and then the miners went on holidays. And then Lynch's didn't reopen. It was kind of normal. I think they didn't reopen straight after the holidays. And then I was sent to Rover for a couple of weeks, and there wasn't enough of men at the time, maybe after holidays, and that men didn't come back immediately. And I was in Rover for a couple of weeks, and then I ended up in Dwyer for the last of my stint until the end of the summer.
Right. At that time, you mentioned fellas might come back immediately. A lot would depend on the summer, whether it was good and whether hay was saved.
That's right, yes.
Back to the part-time farmers,
yes.
Full-time miners, but they still have to look after the farms.
Yes, a lot of them, if they had a bit of hay to save or whatever, a bit of farm work had to be done, they mightn't come back maybe for 2 or 3 weeks after the summer holidays, which seemed to be kind of normal in them times,
What were your first impressions of the mines when you arrived on them back in 1985?
Well, the first impressions in Lynch's pit when I went working to it, the first job I was doing was I was working with Frankie Early, God be good to him, on the clips.
Right.
Clipping on and off the hutches off the line, coming in and out from the hill, as we call it. And then as time went on, I was done a bit of time with Frank on the clips, and then they were short of a drawer, and I was sent in to do a bit of drawing off another fine gentleman, Josie Layden. And that was my first experience of drawing. Look, it was hard work, but it was great life experience.
Yeah. For a lot of the young miners that went in, they depended so much on maybe the older miners that would be there to learn the way of the mines. And I suppose you were lucky going in there that there was pure gentlemen that you were walking along with.
I was very lucky, yeah. Frank was a kind gentleman, and he showed me the few safety items and a few things to be careful of when you were dealing with the clips. If you didn't get them right, you could get your fingers caught or something like that. And I remember going into Josie Layden, and the foreman at the time, he says, "Go into Josie Layden now," he says, "and draw a few hutches from him," he says, and mind yourself. And I remember Josie had a good old laugh. He says, "There's no need to tell you to mind yourself."
It comes second nature.
Yeah, Josie was a real gentleman. I had a lot of respect for Josie, even down the years. Many's a night I met him in McCrans after.
Yeah.
And we used to joke about going in to mind myself.
Somewhere on it.
Yeah.
For a lot of young lads that came into the mines and spent a summer, a lot of them could have had maybe other careers, maybe lined up and in their minds, and could have been very good academically. But once they got into the mines and got the money that was available, an awful lot of them stayed in the mines. But you decided that you were going to explore other avenues.
I did, I suppose. Maybe, look at it, was a fine experience, and the money was reasonably good at the time, and the days was relatively short. But I suppose maybe at that stage, John, I could really see the writing on the wall. We were only 5 years after I was in it, the mines closed down. So it was going to be a very short career for me,
Yeah.
So that's probably why I always had a bit of an interest in machinery, and an apprenticeship came up on board in Mona, and I jumped at that chance.
Yeah. And it proved to be a wise decision. Obviously, like so many households, your dad was synonymous with mining in Arigna over a long number of times. So
Yeah.
you'd have had an idea from him from what was involved, I presume. And
Yeah,
the stories at home.
in his younger days, he worked underground, and then as time went on, then he took different jobs. He drove a truck, and then for the latter years before the mines closed, he worked up on the open cast, driving machinery up there for quite a good few years, And I suppose it was normal enough for young fellas to go to work with their father. That time I would have been up and down to the open cast and been seeing the machinery working, and I had a big interest in it. it was a great life experience to see how everything worked, you know. And even when I was in Lynch's, I remember one evening I went on the so-called back shift to see the coal cutting machine working. I went with Mickey Lavin and Tom and Paddy Joe. God be good to Mickey and Tom. I went with them I think it was a Monday evening. Monday was the miners' day off, and they used to go and, as they say, cut the run on a Monday. Yeah. And I went with them for one evening to see how that was done. You know,
and for somebody, as you said yourself, you had the interest in machinery and you're very much mechanically minded. There was a great skill set when it came to cutting coal that, you know, could have been fairly tricky by times, and it took fellas of certain skills to be able to do it.
Yeah, I would say so, yeah. Like, you know, they were very conscious of the way the cable was pulled along and the way as they used to say, jib in and jib out, and you know, to make sure everything was it was a very skillful job. Like, and I suppose the three of them, Paddy Joe and Mickey and Tom, kind of came together very much as a team, and it was a kind of a team game. Like, you just couldn't.
When you were telling me, fellas, that you went to school with what you were going to do in 85 for the summer, and we're looking at the conditions here. Thankfully, the roof is high, but there's some water dropping in the background, and as you went in the mines, the roof got a lot lower. Did any of them ever say, well, you're mad in the head to be going into those places?
I don't recall any of them saying to me, do you know, don't recall any of them saying to me that I was mad in the head. I suppose it all kind of came around sudden enough. Like, we finished up school maybe the end of May or the beginning of June, and sure, I suppose like every other young fellow in the place, I called to Micheál Laden, got me go to him at the house and asked him for a job, and I was told to be in Lynch's pit the next morning, do you know what I mean? And
it was that quick of a turnaround?
It was that quick of a turnaround. I suppose I didn't get a chance to discuss it with schoolmates or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I think the first day I might have got a lift with my father, because the open cast was up there as well. And from then on, I went on the back of the lorry.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, what was the reception like at home when you went back and said, I'm after getting the job of Micheál Laden?
Well, sure, it was a bit mixed, but sure, look, it was a few pound for me, and
yes,
you know, the days was relatively short, and sure, there was lots of other things you could do, you know.
Absolutely. I think that's what we heard from an awful lot of people that would have come in like that. The interview was very similar to yours, and when they went home, there was a kind of a mixed reaction to it. The into the working day, for the miners were used to, and for many of them then after 1990 they went into other jobs. That was one of the big things that they found hard to get used to, maybe the longer working days than other jobs after the mines, where you went in and you worked like hell for the few hours and then got out.
Yeah, the working day was relatively short. Like, I distinctly remember, especially in Durnavuggy, I used to travel to work that time with Vince Gilrain, my neighbour, and we'd leaving maybe the house 8 o'clock or maybe a few minutes before it, home then at 2:30, 3:15. Now, you work bloody damn hard for them few hours, but
it was the day was relatively short.
The day was relatively short, yeah.
The work was tough.
Yeah.
Growing up in Rigna that time, so much depended on the mines. It was obviously the big employer, not alone for Rigna, but for the surrounding areas as well. When you contrast maybe Rigna, say, back in the 80s to what it is now, is that difficult to make the comparison? Because nobody thought there'd probably be life in Rigna after the mines closed.
Well, I remember before the mines closed, there was an awful lot of discussion about what would happen to Rigna when the mines did close. And I suppose people adapted a little bit, you know, people got work in, I remember one of the big employers when the mines closed was probably maybe the meat factory in Ruski and places like that, you know.
Yeah.
It was maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes up the road, and people just adopted, and thankfully a lot of them stayed around the area and married and raised families in the area, and it kept the village alive. Now, obviously, there is changes, like with our few businesses and shops and stuff now gone in the village, but like that didn't happen straight after the mines closed, you know.
Yeah.
I suppose like there was other towns around as well that found the pinch when the mines closed.
Yeah. You would have experienced the mines for the years. You worked in other jobs as well. For the younger generation, maybe that's following our generation, do you think many would have come in and taken on these conditions in the current day?
No. The young generation nowadays would not take on this sort of work. And I can honestly say it was probably the best life experience ever I had.
Yeah.
To come in and work on the mines and learn how to kind of look after your workmates, because safety was paramount. Do you know what I mean? Every man looked after each other because you're always dependent on your workmates to kind of watch out and be listening for cracks and creaks and all that sort of thing. And I don't think the youth of today would come in and do the manual work that's had to be done here at that time, you know.
Yeah. The work was hard. I presume the crack was good at break times and there was great carrying.
Crack was good, and to be honest with you, John, I think a lot of the stuff that was probably said at peacetime, as we called it, when you'd be sitting down with your jacket across your shoulders having your lunch,
Yeah.
a lot of what was said that time would probably end up in court now if it was said, you know. It wouldn't be very politically correct, you know. And for that reason, like, it was a great life experience as well, you know. It taught me an awful lot of stuff as a young fella, you know, before I went away working.
Absolutely, it was an invaluable lesson as it went on.
And I often thought maybe some young people now, if they got the same sort of a life lesson, it wouldn't do them a bit harm.
Absolutely. Finally, from obviously you had the year yourself in the mines, your dad, as we mentioned, synonymous with mining. How important is it that the memories, the practices, the work that they put into the mines, that's preserved and showcased here in the mining experience, and indeed the videos that we're conducting now, that they'll be there for tourists coming in, that they can be able to scan those interviews and listen and watch them, and in many ways it keeps the mining memories alive and preserved.
I think it's very important, John, to keep them memories alive, and not alone for tourists, but like there's quite a few people a bit younger than me and older than me that never worked in the mines. There's one man springs to mind, I'm not going to mention his name. I remember having a chat with him one time, and he said his big regret in life was that he never worked in the mines. And he lives in Arigna to this day. He just got another job and he went off, and he never worked in the mines. He never came in and seen the mines working. You know, I was, I suppose, lucky enough. I got working in the mines. As I say, I went and done the evening, when the cut and the run, I done the clips, I done all them other sort of bits and pieces of jobs, and I kind of seen how the whole thing worked. Yeah. But like there is loads of people that never seen, and that's part of our history and our heritage in Arigna.
Absolutely, and you always have that tag of being a former miner.
Well, yeah, and it's a kind of, it can be a conversation starter or finisher or whatever. I often see it because I go out to Kieran there to the old leisure centre, and you'd meet people there from far and near, and you get chatting, and they say that they have been here or they're coming here or whatever, and they say, oh geez, I'd love to meet an ex-miner, and this conversation starts in, well, I'm an ex-miner.
Yeah.
You know.
And to share your experiences with them.
Share your experience with them, yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, there'll be some brilliant memories from it. For tourists and stuff coming in, would an awful lot of them believe, Kieran, the conditions that the fellas worked in back then?
Probably not, John. And you know, this is a fantastic facility and everything, but like, you know, as you say, the roof is high, and, you know, I have a bit of a tarmac walkway here and whatnot. Like, it was an awful lot different underground that time. Like, during the Vuggy Pit in particular was the most of a 2 mile walk in the morning. I remember in Rover then there was really low roof. You know, there was an awful lot of different things. The conditions that you see here were tough, but I think really when it was working, it was tougher. Absolutely. And when I was in it, it had improved a lot from what it was maybe 20, 30 years previous.
Even the difference in the pit helmets with the lights compared to
yes.
the Caroline lads and whatever. All right, well, look, it's some great memories on it. Kieran, thanks a million for joining us.
Thanks, John.
And great to hear your memories of 1985 and that summer in the mines.
Thanks a million, John.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
I think of the life of a miner who must work all his day underground, where his lamplight is all that will shine there, and it's dark and it's damp all around. It is 2 or 3 miles to the coal face, and the tunnel is jagged and low, but he cannot find work on the surface, so it's down in the mines he must go.